What's up YouTube, it's Black Guy Senpai, and today I am here bringing you a deck profile on one of the most fun decks I have played in a while in Standard, Flagship Flagburg Dragon. So this deck's not too expensive, it's not going to break the bank, it's not also going to break the meta, but it is fun, it's fast paced, and you'll enjoy yourself, I can guarantee that. First, we're going to go ahead and start out with our ride line. Our ride line, we also always have the default starter, flavor of the clan or nation. When this unit is rode upon, if you went second, draw a card. Next, we have Inroad Shooter. Inroad Shooter is a nice addition to Stoicheia, because this ride line, I've seen the grades 1 and 2 splashed in a lot of decks, especially in future upcoming sets. But what Inroad Shooter does is when it's rode upon by the grade 2, whose name is Ascended Assault, you call this card to rear guard. So that's automatically, it's a net even. But if your Vanguard is Flagburg, or if it's Ascended Assault, it gains Intercept and Power plus 2000. Which makes it a 10k beater or a 10k booster, which is really nice. And if it's still early, you can go ahead, swing with it, do the 10k, then when they swing it, you're a Vanguard on the next turn on a rear guard, and it's 13-14, go ahead, block with it too. That's pretty nice, I like that. Next is Ascendant Assault. He has an ability that can be paid with a reveal of Flagburg or an Inroad Shooter that you have in your hand. As you can see in my deck, I don't have any other Inroad Shooters, so this usually is just paid by revealing a Flagburg from my hand. But when it's rode upon, it doesn't say by Flagburg, but when it's rode upon, this you can pay the cost of Soul Blast 1 and then call this card to rearguard circle. And it is important to note that the card that you Soul Blast out cannot be him. It cannot be Ascendance Assault. But Ascendance Assault is really great just because he's one of my favorite cards, except he has a cost. This is when your other rearguard attacks a Vanguard. If your Vanguard is Flagship Flagburg Dragon, you counterblast 1, stand this unit. So unfortunately, that reveal the Flagburg can't be used to pay that cost, but it is a cheap cost. It's counterblast 1. He is one of 3 cards in this deck that I'm currently using that uses counterblast, and it's soon to possibly just be 2. You don't find yourself using too many counterblasts per turn. You see yourself maybe using 1 or 2. Next is the second card in the deck that counterblasts. Flagship Flagburg Dragon. The reason why you even have this deck, aka Maelstrom Light, aka Maelstrom with the one horn. This card says, when this unit attacks a Vanguard, you counterblast 1. Perform all of the effects below according to the number of times you attack this turn. 3, you draw a card. 4, you choose 2 of your opponent's rear guards and retire them. 5 or more until the end of that battle, this unit gets power plus 10,000, and when your opponent would call cards from their hand to Guardian Circle, they must call 3 or more at the same time. Most of the time, as long as we are all little good sailors, we should be paying attention to the board, the field, our hand, our opponent's hand. And we should know when to use this 5th or more attack and when not, because a lot of the times it's more beneficial to just swing when you're at 4 than it is when you're at 5. Usually I only swing at 5 for the first one, and then when I know I can go for game, when my opponent has 2 or less cards in their hand. So let's get on to the remainder of the deck. These are the other 3 Flagburgs we run, total of 4. A total of 4 Ascendant Assaults. Next is our other restander, Aggress Blue Dragon. He is a auto rear guard. At the end of the battle that this unit attacked a rear guard, if your opponent, or if your Vanguard, not your opponent, if your Vanguard is Flagburg, cost Soul Blast 1, restand this unit. So between these two, if you just have Flagburg as a Vanguard and these 2 on the board, you can swing 4 times. You can swing 4 times automatically, just these 2. So swing with him, swing with this at a rear guard, Soul Blast 1, restand it, swing it at a Vanguard, counterblast 1 for him, restand him. That's 3 right there. At that point, that's usually when I swing with Flagburg, because then you have 1 more attack to go, and you can pile on any triggers that your opponent decides to block for on him. But yeah, these two, very nice little tag team combo. Even if you get two Ascendant Assaults or two Aggressive Blue Dragons, it's still a good time. For you anyway, not your opponent. And lastly, to round up my grade 2s, we have Blooming Petal. I'm not about to butcher that name. Her skill, or its skill, because all of the Neo Nectar-ish type units are, they can basically be any gender they want to, so not to offend anybody. When this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if your soul has no cards, soul charge 2. It's really great for Aggressive Blue Dragon because he burns out a lot of soul. Not to mention the ride deck, or the ride line doesn't help your soul cost at all, because by the time that you get to use bring out Ascendant Assault, you usually have one or no cards in soul. So if you want to use him, go ahead, feel free. But I feel like this is a good card, but for set 5, we're gonna need a card for Flagburg that does this mid battle, even if it's just a soul charge 1. Because this is great, but it makes it awkward sometimes for when you have 1 in soul. You can't exactly soul blast it out early, but I mean you can. There are ways to do it. Anyway, that's our grade 2s, and we're finally on to the grade 1s. I'm going to start off with my newest and most favorite grade 1, Prize Trident. This guy, he has made it. This is one of the few cards out of this deck, aside from the ride line, that has branched out into other decks. I've seen this played in Zorga. I've seen this played in set 4 Magnolia. I've seen it played in current Magnolia. Because if you can hit 5 attacks, you put this into your soul, countercharge 1. It's a countercharger that happens mid-battle. So you can, like, if you have this behind Flagburg or whatever, and it's the 5th attack or more, you get more soul for next time. So for me, that's great. I love it. Next, of course, we have 4 Perfect Guards from set 1. We're going to start over here. We're going to start with our Order Spiritual Body Condensation. I've said a lot about this card. I enjoy it very thoroughly. If you want to hear about how I feel about the card, specifically go to my Zorga deck profile that's been on here for months now. But it's basically an extra copy of all your cards on board. You have 5 of your restanders. You have 5 counter chargers. You have 5 Admantis. And speaking of which, Admantis is our next grade 1. He's a 13k body for a turn, but then he stays around and he helps you keep on boosting. He takes these guys to 18, which is a magical number against opponent's vanguards. He makes this, like this behind this, an 18 as well. Actually, he'd make it a 23 if you ride onto Ascendant Assault. You have this out on board because you called it out from Soul, and then you call out Admantis, put the 5k on Inroad Shooter, and have Admantis boosting. That's a 23k column on your opponents, like when they're most likely at grade 1 or grade 3 or grade 2. That's really good. Even if you had that out when your opponent's on grade 3, that's still like a 15k shield if they haven't gotten any triggers, or if they're not playing with the equip deck, Barov's Nagus, whatever her name is. And finally, a card that I'm actually debating on taking out because everything else in the deck does so well, and there's very few cards that I want to use this effect on. Like, as of right now, there's realistically just like 1 or 2 cards that I want to use this effect on. But this card is High Rate Burst Dragon. High Rate Burst Dragon states, auto, when this unit's placed on rearguard circle, doesn't designate from hand, so you can do it with this, or if you get it back from prison. If your Vanguard is Flagburg, choose one of your other rear guards, and it gets auto rearguard circle when this unit attacks. If it is the first battle of this turn, cost counterblast 1, soul blast 1, and stand this unit until end of turn. I admit this card is great. It's a good card, but because of the soul blast 1 and counterblast 1, if I have both of these Aggressive Blue and Ascendant Assault on the board, that's a 2 counterblast, 2 soul blast turn. And that's maybe if I don't use Flagburg. If I use Flagburg, that's going to be a 3 counterblast, 2 soul blast turn. If I have Prize Trident, then maybe I'll go for it. Definitely it'll make it a 2-2 turn, but then I lose a rear guard, and then this card just becomes useless for the rest of the time. Like, yes, it sticks around. It's just like Admantis, where I was just praising it that it sticks around, but Admantis at least gives a power boost. This gives, you know, potential for a restand. Well, it doesn't give potential, it just gives a restand. It's a great card, but if it didn't use Counterblast and Soul Blast, then I think it would be better. And it's restricting it to the first attack. So, I mean, you could go here, swing Ascendance Assault twice, then swing here at the rear guard, stand it, swing out of the vanguard, stand this, swing at the vanguard, and then swing with Flagburg. But again, that's, you know, 3 Counterblasts, 2 Soul Blast for that turn. I mean, and on turn 3 or turn 4, typically, I don't see myself with that many resources, and if I do, I'm in a bad way. Or my opponent is just like so far ahead of me in hand size that they can afford to just block all my rear guard attacks and take my vanguard. But let's move on to the trigger lineup. We're running currently 8 crits, 4 of which being the ones that go into soul, which I do and I don't appreciate these cards, because you're giving up a 15k shield for 1 soul and 2000 power. I feel like they should have made it at least a 3k boost, so that way when these two restand, they can hit, or that this can hit on its own, a non-grade 2 unboosted, which would have made this deck a little bit better in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. So again, 8 crits, 1 over trigger, well, the Omni trigger, which is if you hit it, you bind this card, draw a card, you get a critical, front row gets +10, and then if you had the same amount of damage as your opponent or more, you heal. I love this over trigger. Like, this is probably it is my favorite over trigger. So, I mean, fight me. I'm on Tabletop Simulator all the time, as you can see. Of course, for heals, aka our other countercharging source now, and I run 3 draws. Yes, I do know and I do understand that you are going to have a full front row, and most of the time I'm not going to attack with Flagburg at the 5th battle, but I do attack with Flagburg 4th battle. I rarely attack with him on 3rd battle unless it's like I have no choice. So I want to see my pieces. So as of right now, I'm testing out 3 draw triggers, but when set 4 comes and we get the new draw trigger, I'm taking out 1 crit, which is Abyss Temptation, and putting up 4 draw triggers so I can see my pieces a little bit more. But yeah, and you guys can expect to see the changes from my Magnolia deck and potentially my Zorga deck. I'm still working on Zorga, but if you guys do want to see that, I'll be posting that sometime later on this week, so stay tuned. I will be showing you guys some nice little combos that I came up with this deck. I'll show you guys exactly how your turn 3 and your turn 4, or your ride progression up to turn 3 and turn 4 should look like, generally, and then I'll throw in some gameplay at the end. So where you can see the deck live in action, where it's non-scripted. I'll be playing against one of the better players at my locals. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and enjoy the next section. Alright guys, so sorry about that, but I'm just going to be doing a voiced over because the audio for this original video, it got really horribly corrupted, so I didn't want to put that out to you guys, and I didn't want to re-record it over again. So I'm going to go basically over from, this is after I got done shuffling on Tabletop Simulator to do this originally. So I draw my 5 cards. Now usually people would want to keep, actually let's keep going, because these are the 2 cards that I'm getting rid of. I'm debating Spiritual Body Condensation, but this is something you want to have just in case you get early aggression. So I just got rid of the 2 triggers. Ascendance Assault you want to keep in hand just in case, you know, you get to a part where you're running out of things to get rid of because you're going to get an Ascendant Assault from your ride line naturally, and you have 3 more copies. I drew one of those 3 copies. You want to keep Aggress Blue, period, because even if you do get rid of, you know, this Ascendant Assault, we have Spiritual Body Condensation to get them back, just in case, which is the main key point of that. So we're gonna draw our 2 cards that we're missing. I'm still sitting here trying to explain some things. All right, and we got perfect. We got shield. We got a counter charger. This is actually pretty decent hand. And we shuffle again, as you should do. All right, and now we have 2 spiritual body condensations, 1 too many. And as forementioned, because I have the shield, I don't want to get rid of the shield, but I will drop him because, you know, spiritual body condensation. We're good with that. So when our opponent attacks, the main thing that we want to do, it benefits us in no way, shape, or form to take damage early. So we're gonna block it. We're gonna make sure it's a no pass. If they do two attacks, that's when it's okay. I'll just say forget it. They want it that badly, or if they over trigger, then again, that's okay. But you don't want to take damage your first turn at all. The less amount of damage that you have going into your turn 3, the better. So we're gonna pretend like we guarded an attack from them, and then we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna draw for our turn when it comes back to us. And I should be discarding the grade 1 here in my hand. Oh yeah, especially because of this hand. This hand's really good. Oh no, I had discarded spiritual body. Okay, because I have 2, and you usually don't have the soul for that. Here I'm explaining that, you know, what you can do with Ascendance Assault. Basically, what you can do with Ascendance Assault, and because you have Admantis in hand, what you can do is you can call Admantis right here behind your grade 1, and make it a 23k column, because he becomes a 10k and he can intercept because Ascendance Assault is the Vanguard. Or we could do how I'm going to play it, because I am a greedy Aquaforce player, which we're going to see here in a moment, which I place it over here, and then I cascade my attacks. I put, you know, him here, giving Inroad Shooter the 5k, making him a 15k. I attack 8, 10, then 15. That's just because if the 8, you know, if I swing with the Vanguard first and it hits a trigger, 8k can't do anything. But if I swing with this, I get a trigger, it's okay, Vanguard can still swing. And then if anything, I could put a trigger on Vanguard, or I could put a trigger on Inroad Shooter if I want to drain their hand. Which is basically what I'm explaining here. So then, yeah, we do our drive check, and our drive check reveals a heal trigger. So now Inroad Shooter's a 25k, because we're just pretending like they did no guard, and we're getting basically on average 2 damage, but at best we could get 3. Actually, at best we could get 4 if we hit a crit trigger or an over trigger. But yeah, if your opponent seems like they have a nice little chunky hand and you want to make sure that they take it, I don't see the value in making Mantis behind Inroad Shooter unless it's your turn 3 turn. But if it's just your turn 2 turn, it's no point in doing Mantis behind Inroad Shooter. You could just get 3 attacks off and either let them eat damage or take cards out of their hand, which is great. So now we're pretending we're gonna go take damage. I'm explaining that when it's defensively your turn 2, if they want to hit, like, because you're going to be playing Inroad Shooter, you're going to have Inroad Shooter out in the front row. If they're trying to attack Inroad Shooter, you block him. If they're attacking the Vanguard, completely fine. They're attacking a rear guard, completely fine, as long as it's not Inroad Shooter. Inroad Shooter is way more valuable, and I don't hear people talking about this enough, but his card value from turn 2 to your turn 4 potentially is where he's most valuable at, because he's a 10k body, he can intercept, and he can hit your opponent's grade 2, and yeah, he can hit your opponent's grade 2s or lowers without needing a boost. He could do it all on his own. After that, his return starts to, well, it doesn't really diminish, but it becomes less significant because you can't hit the Vanguard on your own any longer after your opponents went to grade 3. So whenever you get a trigger, put it on inroad shooter, just let it go. And then, yeah, I'm still explaining the value of inroad shooter. And the only reason why I only have one in the deck, which is in the ride line, just mainly because he's great, but again, after turn 4, his value starts to diminish. Okay, and then I was like, yeah, because you want to go into turn 3 with 2 cards in hand, or 2 damage on average, unless you have a way to make 5 battles with 1 counter blast, and you have the grade 1 down here. So that's perfect. We discard a draw trigger. We ride Flagburg. Normally we would use Ascendant Assault's alternate cost, which is revealing a Flagburg to pay the cost. But since we don't have it in the hand, we are going to be we're going to be Soul Blasting 1, and I believe we call it out behind Admantis. Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We're going to switch the spots. So now your opponent, like, we went first. Your opponent is on, and I'm thinking about putting him up, but I'm like, oh no, I don't have any soul. So I do that for a second, but then I quickly realize I have no soul. I leave inroad shooter because all the value. But yeah, this we can get like 3 solid attacks off with the rear guards, and we're completely fine. But like, we go ahead and we swing with Ascendance Assault first, then we go to Inroad Shooter, and then we go back to Ascendance Assault. So we go 10, 10, 18. So we go 10, 10, which are the 2 rear guards, and then we activate Ascendance Assault skill, counterblasting 1 to restand himself. And then at this point, we have to make a decision on, do we want Flagburg to be turned or the 3rd swing? We can't do 4 attacks. We can't kill off their rear guards. Most likely they don't have that many rear guards. So I like to make this the 3rd attack and then put all the triggers and whatnot onto Ascendance Assault. But if you want to go for this part of the play where you swing and you get to kill 2 rear guards, counterblasting 1, you draw a card, and then you pick 2 rear guards. And then you do your drive check. I mean, regardless, it still would have came out the same. It's just depending on what effect you want to use. But that essentially is the average of my turn 3s. Usually I may have a Flagburg in hand, but there isn't really too much more to this. But I do want to say, just make sure that when you're playing Flagburg, you're mindful of the board state and you pay attention very closely, because if not, you're going to be wasting Flagburg's skill, or you're going to be wasting resources just to do the 5th attack. You don't always have to do the 5th attack. The 5th attack is a commodity you want to use for, like, when your opponent has 2 cards in hand, or if you can easily make that setup. So any questions, comments, put them down in the comments below. Don't forget to share, like, if you want to. Feel free to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later.